I'll compare divas and talk Black excellence with our next guest, Patrick D Mccoy, who is an avid arts advocate and musician. Join me now for this very special talk here on Unmute the Voices. Patrick, welcome to Unmute the Voices. I'm so glad to have you here.
It's an honor to be here, Quentin. Thank you for having me.
I have been following you on social media, and I just got to say, you keep it real.
I know that's right.
You keep it real, and I really appreciate your candor, your honesty, no matter if we're talking about social issues or we're talking about this crazy pandemic that we're in, or even who our favorite divas are. You really do keep it real, and I appreciate that because you don't see that a lot of times in classical music where people are bringing their true, authentic selves to the art form. You do so many things. You are an educator, you are a writer, a reviewer, you interview people on your own podcast series. How do you do it all? How do you make time for all the things that you have going on in your life?
Well, I think when you're passionate about things and you enjoy what you're doing, it's not a chore. So, being able to just, do these interviews, or whether I'm at church playing the organ or directing my choir, or whether I'm at school, these are all things that bring me joy. And I think that when your joy is complete, then, all of it comes together. So it's not a whole lot of work. Like if somebody says, okay, I'm going to this place, that, oh, I have to do it. But just to answer your question, it's a joy to do all of these things. And so I do it with great passion and great zeal.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, one thing about you that I really love, you're an organist, but you have such a passion for opera. How did that come into play? How did you get involved and interested in opera?
Oh my goodness. So my first musical interest, I must yield and go back to the church.
Mm,
Particularly most African American musicians, the church, forms that center of when you were first exposed to music. And so in my instance, actually, my one of my high school teachers invited me to his church, which was a predominantly white church, and they did all the great anthems and so forth and so on. But to answer your question, the interest in opera came much later when I got hired as the organist choir director at Covenant Presbyterian Church in Petersburg, my
mm.
hometown. There was a doctor who sang in the choir. He just recently passed, Dr. Jimmy Mason. And Dr. Mason was an avid opera aficionado. So he would get all of these season tickets, and he would, go through the ones that he wanted to go to, and of course the ones he didn't want to go to. So I got lucky and got one of the ones that he didn't want to go to. But guess what that opera was? Every time I tell somebody my first opera, they're like, "What in the world?" My first opera was Electra.
No.
And that is like a heavy duty opera. It's not like Mozart, like Così fan tutte or Le Nozze di Figaro, where it's very jovial. I mean, Electra is no games there. So that was my
None.
first opera, but it piqued my curiosity, and that's how I got into it.
I was going to say, I mean, Electra, that opera, for that to be your first opera, I mean, you're right. No games are being played with that opera.
Not
I-
at all.
Is that kind of what drew you to um, learning more about like the role of the diva in opera? Was there any sort of influence with that?
I would say so because Electra, that character is on the stage predominantly the whole time, and either you have it or you don't. So I mean, you have to be able to carry the part. So I would say so.
Okay, so tell us what it means when you say you either have it or you don't. What's that mean in classical music?
Well, I think that in classical music, when you take center stage, I mean, you have to know that your place is on the stage. Even if you have some people, and I will even say myself, as an example, you might be quiet and timid at your house or to yourself, but once that light hits you, it's like everything that you were meant to be comes alive in that moment. So I feel like when I say either you have it or you don't, it's already there. It's about you having the moment to bring it to fruition.
Yeah, yeah. So for someone who is discovering if they have it or they don't, what can they do?
They can surround themselves with people who are going to encourage them, who are going to mentor them. You want to be around like-minded people. So for me, that person was my music teacher in high school. She was amazing and she was encouraging. And so even though Petersburg, we don't have a big opera house, this teacher imparted all the wisdom for what she experienced, as a singer. Even though she didn't make a career out of singing, she was a teacher and an educator, and that's just as important.
And so is that something that you do now because you also teach? Is that do you take kind of those influences of the past and kind of instill them in your students?
I definitely do. I mean, because when I was in high school, I would say I had natural talent, but the theory and all of the technical aspects of music still had to be developed. So I had
Mhm.
to recognize that somebody took time with me, and now I had to take time with these students.
And so, as a teacher, you teach at a historically black college, Virginia State University. Talk to us about what that's like as an instructor, passing on this art form of classical music to students at a historically black college. What's that experience like for you, both as a teacher and as an artist?
Mm. Well, first of all, it's a full circle moment
Hmm.
because I don't only just teach at Virginia State, I'm an alum of Virginia State. And I graduated from there. I sang in the choir there. So I got to experience all of the richness of the faculty and even my peers. You had people like Camilla Williams and Undine Smith Moore who came out of Virginia State. So even during that time, there was a model of excellence. And so now to be back on the faculty and get to almost walk hand in hand with the very professors that taught me is very gratifying. And it's a testament that it doesn't matter where you go, excellence can reside anywhere, whether it's a historically black college, whether it's a predominantly white institution. If you're there to achieve what you're trying to do in music and in the arts, you can do it. It's about you putting the best effort forward.
I really appreciate you saying that because, there's now this term, Black excellence, and that is used so frequently now for Black people who have achieved a certain um, pinnacle within their career. Would you say that Black excellence is something that is achieved, a journey?
To me, I view it as a journey. It's never done. You could go out here and play the best violin solo today at Carnegie Hall, but it's not done for you because I feel like, whether people want to address this or not, I think as a person of color, you always have to be one step ahead, always moving ahead. So whereas you might think you did something wonderful and you have an audience that said, oh, Quinn, that's wonderful. Oh, Patrick, that's wonderful. You still have another hill to climb. So to answer your question, I think it's a journey. It never stops. You can't even, my professor used to always say, you never sell your audience cheap. What you might have done that night or in that moment is not sufficient. So to answer your question again, yes, it's a journey.
Well, that's interesting because Leontine Price one of the divas of all divas and Black excellence of all Black excellence, at least in the opera field. She used to, had a famous quote, which was, yesterday's high C was just that, yesterday, right? And so kind of to your point that it is kind of this journey that you're constantly on. So why do you think it is that some people within the Black community, they kind of get there and then they just either coast or things get stale? Like, what sort of advice would you give to someone who they feel like they have achieved excellence, but they don't know where to go from there? How can they stay fresh or current within their own respective field to remain excellent?
Well, I would say this, all of us will have a moment where we're going to have to, shift our attention maybe from education to performance or performance to writing or whatever the case may be. And I think that you have really done your job as far as excellence is when you can see it in somebody that you have brought along with you. It's not about you just getting to the level and then you just, keep it for yourself and you praise your own accolades. You should be able to see the excellence in somebody you have mentored and somebody that you have definitely brought along. And so I think that is a part of this whole idea of excellence and being able to just still be relevant, whether you're performing or whether it's in another area of music. But excellence, I think you should be able to see that as someone you have mentored.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think of as being of supreme Black excellence?
In terms of classical music in general?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well,
and
I
more
would like
specifically, more specifically opera. More specifically opera.
Well, of course, everybody who knows me knows that Kathleen Battle is my favorite singer. I have many different artists that I admire, but it was because of Miss Battle and Wynton Marsalis, I was exposed to them because I saw the album cover of Baroque Duet.
Yes.
We used to have this music store called Peaches. And I said, who is this woman? Who is this man? And then when I got that recording, my life was truly changed. And when you listen to the excellence with them performing all of this Baroque music with trumpet and soprano, it's just unmatched. And that has always been in my head. So definitely those two, Kathleen Battle, Wynton Marsalis.
Now, I'll tell you this. Handel, George Frederick Handel, Baroque composer, wrote a piece that they both performed. We've had that piece on this show, Let the Bright Seraphim.
From Samson.
Correct. George Frederick Handel was an investor in the African slave trade. Let's say that he rose from the Baroque grave of the 17th century and came to Patrick D Mccoy's house for tea. And you said, I got to play this recording for you. How would that conversation go, with you knowing what his past has been?
Now, Quinn, this is treading on messy territory because, even at Christmas time, I want to say it was Terrence McKnight, and it was a whole round table on Handel and Handel's Messiah.
Right.
And it was these same kind of things. And I just want to break it down for me. And I'm going to get myself in trouble saying this. I think that when we learn about horrific events in history, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves and to go into ourselves and say, how are we going to make things better now? Mm. So to get to my point, if Handel came to this house of mine with me fried chicken and greens and some candied yams and some rolls, and he wants to hear Let the Bright Seraphim, he would get Kathy Battle and Wynton Marsalis. Because for me, that is like the pinnacle of excellence that he was working towards when he wrote that piece. I know other people have their preference. They might want to hear Dave Carey to Carnival when she sang it at the royal wedding. But for me, in my house, that's who I would play. So to answer your question, again, I think that we have to know, in all seriousness, we have to know the history and the implications of things that happen.
Right.
But that, to me personally, if you think about it, every African American person of color who studies classical music is going to be the classical canon. Do you think there weren't other composers who probably were invested in the slave trade?
Facts.
That would be worth researching.
Absolutely. I totally concur with you. What I was going to say is, hey, why not actually reinvest that money instead of looking at Black people as property, actually as people, and boosting their careers so they become more excellent? How about that?
Oh, my goodness.
Right? So there's a way to actually respond differently. It's not about what happens to you, but it's how you respond, right?
Oh, my.
Right? So, sure, you've done all these things in the past, but let's actually realign your views so that you can understand that Black people aren't property, but we are actually humans of this universe who are bringing not only a new audience, but we are actually creating your beauty into our own beauty that empowers the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what Black excellence is? It's a way for us to use our talents and our skills to empower all people.
Yes. And, I must say, traditionally in our culture, we've had many atrocities and bad things to happen to us, but we're still able to give. We're still able to give.
Yes.
And that's to your earlier point. I mean, that's the way I see it. You have all these things that happen, but what are we going to do right now?
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do right now?
So what do we do? What do we do so that more people can be empowered through the beauty and the transformation of classical music?
Well, it's unfortunate that the travesty of George Floyd and so many other persons of color who got in this whole movement that we've had of social and racial injustice, that we had to see all of these solidarity statements and all of these types of things where more people of color are being included. And I feel like, we don't just want a seat at the table. We have to realize that we are the table. And if it wasn't for us, being at the table, a lot of the cultural beauty and a lot of the things that we bring to the performing arts, classical music, would not be. So I just really feel that, we are at a place where we have a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of work to do in this area.
I agree. And I think the more that we can talk about who we are, what we do, what our mission, what our impact is, and also celebrate that, that is going to empower more people to understanding that, to your point, we're not trying to take anything away. We are trying to bring more beauty of this art form to all people. So I think I have one more question for you. You do so many things in classical music that I think should be celebrated. But I want to know personally more about who Patrick McCoy is. So I want to know, if you were born in, I don't want to say your age, but you're an 80s baby, raised in the 80s, who's your favorite divas? Linda Gray, Sue Ellen Ewing from Dallas.
Dallas.
Right? Or Dominique Devereaux from Dynasty.
Well, if I had to pick between the two, of course it'd be Dominique Devereaux, because anybody who knows me, I have the complete series of Dynasty, and I binge watch Dynasty. I can tell you every punchline. And the thing that I liked about Dominique Devereaux, of course, played by the late Diane Carroll, the fact that, she was this songstress, but then she was this high-powered businesswoman. And a lot of times you didn't see the combination of an African-American actor or actress, that they're a musician and a business person. It probably they would have been just a musician. But in this instance, I mean, she brought such a powerful role to Dynasty. And not to mention, she was the rival of Alexis character Kobe Dexter Rowan, who was played by Joe Collins. So that was just those two together. Oh my God, I could watch that all day.
Okay, so who's the Dominique Devereaux of classical music?
Well, I would say my girl, Kathleen Battle. Definitely. I mean, the elegance, the confidence, all of that. So that would definitely be my choice if I had to make an analogy.
And Girlfriend doesn't play either.
No.
It has been such a pleasure to talk to you on our show. Thank you so much for coming on and dropping these gems of knowledge. I really appreciate getting to know you. What do you want people to know about you, or what's something that you can leave our viewers with today?
I particularly want to talk to the people who get discouraged in this art form, whether you black, red, green, polka dot, whatever the case may be. If you have a passion, you sing, you play an instrument, I just want anyone who's under the sound of my voice to know that there's a place for you. Don't let anybody discourage you. Somebody might say your voice is too heavy for Bach, or your voice is too light for Wagner. If it's a passion of yours, keep on pressing, keep on moving, keep on striving, because at the end of the day, you have to make the decision to be excellent. We talked about this whole idea of Black excellence, but just the whole idea of excellence, period. There's a quote that Undine Smith-Moore used in one of her pieces. She says in the quote, which is by Michelangelo, that whoever strives after perfection is striving after God. And we're all striving. So I just want to bear that in mind as we close.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on our show. I'm sending you a virtual hug. Thank you, my brother. This is awesome. You're awesome. And we really appreciate the work, the dedication, and the focus that you bring to classical music.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Join us next time for another episode of Unmute the Voices. I'm Dr. Quentin Morris, and it has been a pleasure having Patrick D Mccoy on our show. If you'd like to learn more about Unmute the Voices, please visit our YouTube page, where you can find us under Unmute the Voices. Until next time, enjoy your day.